Okay, so I'm making this video called Democratizing Communication. It's during the lockdown period, when the entire globe has gone down in lockdown. So you'll hear a bit of family in the background, might be a bit of laughing and a bit of cooking in the kitchen, but that just goes with the territory, yeah. So what is this all about? I'm going to take you through a short journey of how the telephone and communication happened and why I'm so keen on promoting people to use a soft phone or a Sip phone, be able to call from their mobile devices or from their laptop and use it in the purpose that it was intended. Everybody's come along and monetized every single communication format. So let me just share with you what my thinking is. So way back in the day, there used to be telegrams, and of course the people that put down the cables used to charge you for transmitting across the cables. Then along came the telcos. Now in South Africa, it's Telkom is the main service provider. They're sort of quasi-government owned at a stage, and they introduced the telephone line where you go through an exchange so that one person knows where the other person is, and often this is geographically located. So your number that you're given as a prefix, if it was 041, it was Port Elizabeth. If it was 021, it was Cape Town. But we all went through the copper cables, and Telkom would manage that process and know how to connect us up. As time went on, Telkom was there. They improved their services, and it wasn't only voice. You could now send through visuals, pictures, and that was through a fax machine. So, that was a bit of an advancement. But then along came cellular companies. And what a cell company literally did was, instead of having copper cables to transmit voice messages, they put up Wi-Fi towers, literally. So each tower would communicate to the next tower, and in that way, you could be mobile. So they had cellular phones, mobile phones. The reason it was called a cellular phone is because it connected to cells and transmitted across. So in this case, the cellular companies would allow you to speak over the Wi-Fi network, and also then they allowed you to send messages to each other, which was called short message services. So that was the context of it. Challenge was, if somebody got onto this network, how were they able to contact people on this cable network? And that was the introduction of an exchange that did what we call interconnecting. So it connected people who were on cellular devices with people who were on copper landline devices. And between the cellular companies and the landline companies, they would pay an interconnect fee. So they had some transaction between them that they would pay each other based on the amount of traffic that went through. And for this, each one was paying for per minute of a call. Same thing over with the telecom sector. It was for every minute that you sent messages over, or in the cell companies, for every message you sent over, you were charged. So they eventually made it, very appealing. They're not going to charge per minute, they'll charge per second, because if you speak less than a minute, it wouldn't cost you that much. But bottom line was, this was just voice. This was way before the mobile devices, the cellular phones became internet devices. At that stage, they couldn't handle the internet. Okay, and things then developed from that point on. Then was the arrival of the internet. Okay, the internet was basically before cell phones were integrated with the internet. So the internet introduced the fact that you could get onto your computer, you can link into the internet, and you were able to communicate with people that were also on the internet using their computers. And then things like a fax, which you sent over a phone line, that was now replaced by things like email. So email is just a bundle of text that used the internet, the data of the internet, to transfer. So the internet is really a neutral space. It didn't matter whether you were transferring data in the form of an email or whether you were doing a chat. Instant relay chatting, I think that's what IRC stands for. But whether you were doing chatting or email, as far as the internet's concerned, that was just data moving, bits and bytes moving over. So what the technology started doing is, especially with Skype, they were quite pioneers in it. They started doing voice over the internet. So they were able to connect two devices. So if you had Skype on the one machine, Skype on the other machine, they could communicate, the voice converted into data, move it across the internet, and on the other side decode it, and you could hear what they were saying. They also brought about video. So Skype was quite ahead of its time then. They've fallen a bit back now since, in my opinion, since they've been sold to Microsoft. I think Microsoft bought them out so that they could focus on their solutions. But anyhow, that's another matter. So this was the context of it. So you could do voice over internet and everything. Okay. However, now the cellular companies were looking and going like, yeah, this is going to cause problems, because the cell devices started getting next level. They were able now to have the internet run on them. And the cellular companies were saying, well, our SMS messages is going to suffer, because people that are on internet can send text messages to each other at close to zero cost. So now cellular phones were linked into the internet, and that became the era where you found out that you started getting the entire internet experience on mobile devices. What some companies did in the countries, or globally, in South Africa I know, the cellular companies put pressure on the government that they could use the messaging service to send messages across, and they were prepared to kind of lose the short message service revenue that they had, but they couldn't do voice. So government put in legislation that you weren't allowed to do the VoIP or the video part on mobile devices. In South Africa, up until, I'm doing this in 2020, that was up until I think probably about 8 or 9 years ago, that was still the rule. So government then came in and then said, okay, they're going to open the market and they're not restricting it. You can do voiceover. So when that happened, you had companies who would develop programs like WhatsApp, Telegram, Viber, and so forth, that were able to send messaging across, and more people started putting these apps onto their devices. The only thing is that WhatsApp could only communicate with WhatsApp, Telegram with Telegram. So they had a client on each of the devices that only spoke to each other. So you couldn't send a message from WhatsApp to a Telegram over here. You'd have to get it on your device and copy it into Telegram and send it to a Telegram user. So that is how the mobile devices started communicating, and then it moved from just messaging to eventually sending files, to sending voice over internet, because remember, voice over internet and video was done already previously, but now it was able to get onto the mobile devices. What started happening is that the cellular companies started losing out, and they had to prioritize where they fitted in. So what they started doing is, over their cellular networks, was trying to promote the usage of data transfer, and also then make some revenue on charging people for the data that they use on these devices. So if somebody wasn't connecting to a cellular network, they could connect to some other service provider and get their data. But because they had the device, it just made sense that they could buy the data from the cell companies. So the cell companies had to readjust their monetizing model. But point made is that all these apps came up, and you had chat, you had voice over internet, and you had video. Okay, let's get into the next stage. Now what started happening is a technology like an email. When you send an email from one person to the other, it's got an email address. So if you send it from Gmail, you'll have johnpeter@gmail.com. So on the internet, it will know where that email has to go to. Whether you put the email on your mobile phone, whether it's on a laptop, whether it's whichever device, the email will go to that device because of the protocol that emails use to communicate. Okay. What started happening now is emails were commonplace already, and that happened on mobile devices, on laptops, desktops, etc. But when it came to voice, it was still in the domain of the telecoms. It was in the domain of the cellular companies who were controlling that. SIP technology, session initiated protocol, which is a protocol, which is a kind of communication process where one device will talk to the other device based on a address. Like this look like an email address, but this is referred to as a SIP address. And SIP is a protocol that communicates through the internet from one device to other to connect them. So once they're connected, they can pass data across them. So this here is a protocol that SIP uses. and I'll explain how it's broken up. But what started happening is you started having a mobile device where you could load a app which was non-specific. So it wasn't a WhatsApp or a Telegram app or one like that. It was just a app that came on there where you could load your SIP address, and anybody who called that SIP address could find you anywhere on the world, because they'd call into the internet, and based on the SIP address, it would find the server where you are registered on and pass it to your mobile device. So you could have a SIP address on your computer at work, a SIP address at home, on your mobile, and you can call from one device to the other. It's like sending an email through, but SIP is just as it relates to linking to people, and then you could send email, voice, chat, video, everything over that protocol. So this has now come of age. It's been around for a long while, but most people were struggling to move away from their conventional, telcos with a cable. Most people are moved on to cellular devices now, but moving them from there into the SIP ecosystem. They're not leaving their cell phones behind, but they're just not going through the cell phone service providers. In South Africa, we have like a Vodacom and a Telkom, and we have Cell C and MTN and that sort of stuff. So this would bypass all of that, because you'll connect your mobile device or your laptop, you'll connect it to the internet, and it's like email. Will go and find the other person and link you up, and you'll be able to do voice over internet, etc. This one that I'm showing you here, for example, bottom right, is sip2sip.info. That is like a service provider. The front part is just saying that's a SIP, and then you have the actual SIP name. So this, let me go back. So this SIP name can be a number. It could be a name here, like you could have John Doe at sip. The part after the at is which server is managing it, which company is managing it. This is LinPhone.org, which is an open source service provider. In this case, this is also open source, but you find some that is commercialized companies that will give you a SIP number that you can call through. So in principle, hopefully you get this clear. SIP is the email of voice or video contacting. It literally gives your device an identity that can be found anywhere in the world. So if you in Japan and I'm in Australia and I call you on your SIP number, I don't need to know where you are in the world. It will go across the internet like an email. It will go and find where you are, and it connects the two of us, and we can talk voice, we can do video, we can send messaging, share files, everything. Okay, so who's the one that I strongly recommend? This is LinPhone. LinPhone is an open source platform, self-funded. It's been going for the past 10 years. It's a leader in open source SIP technology. The founder has a very stable company, and he self-funds it, and there's a massive open source community that works with this here. There's a lot of companies' products that you use that's built on the LinPhone technology that you're probably not aware of. But this is freely available. You can go to linphone.org. You can go to the App Store, go download the app onto your phone. At linphone.org, you can go get the desktop version, and you put in your address, which you can register for totally free, and then you can communicate between devices. So this is the platform. This is the site itself. Beautiful site. It's got a lot of phenomenal information, and here you can see you can run on iOS, Android, macOS, Windows, and Linux. Just to explain, this is the conventional SIP protocol identification. So if it's a different company that's running SIP, they'll give you a different address to work through. But pretty much your phone or your desktop is just the software into which you add the address. Exactly the same like emails work, but this would be on your communication device. So how's it broken down? That part just says that it's a SIP address. The next part is just the name. Now, what LinPhone does brilliantly, it can set up your actual phone that you're using, your cellular phone, as your username. So that makes it easy. So if you have a list of people's numbers on your device, LinPhone would be able to then ultimately identify them based on their numbers that you have on the device. So it's not necessary to use a number. You can use anything. You can use your name. You can use My Office. So if you're on LinPhone, you can create My Office for your home computer. If you have a work phone, you can call it Work Phone, if that name is available. Of course, whoever comes first at this exchange at sip.linphone.org gets whatever name is available. So you got to kind of book the name. But you can pretty much put any of the names there. And then the @SIP, this is the server where your calls are routed through. Okay, it's like the internet when you have an email sent through to @Gmail. You could, for all intention purposes, have @gmail.com if they had a SIP server running on their side. So sip.linphone.org is a server name that when you make a call, it will take you to that server. It will identify that it's you and pass you on to anybody that's on the same network. If it's some other network, it will have to pass it through and look for where it exists. But I'm encouraging people just to start getting involved with getting onto LinPhone. It's open source, it's free, you can create accounts, there's no limitation to what you can do. And it's got brilliant applications for mobile device, desktop and everything. Okay, and then the last part there, that's the identifier for which server has been used. So this is the summary. So if you are calling from here and you've chosen that name was available, say Jesse was available and you registered it with sip.linphone.org, you would have that on your phone, and when you dial, you use the app. If you're calling somebody here at the bottom to home office at SIP, you type in there's no number you type in because this person is home office. You'll type into the number that you call, you'll type the text bar and you'll type in home office. Because they're on the same network, the LinPhone network, you don't have to type in the SIP and the SIP at LinPhone, because the system will look at the username and first look at its own database. So in this case, you just type home office. I know this is a common name. You'd probably have to give it a specific name because somebody would choose that. So if you call that, you'll call, it goes to the exchange, it finds the home office, and the person sitting at the home office their phone will ring and they can talk to you there. If this person in the home office says that the person you're looking for is this one on top and they're not at the office, they can go on their list of names and select to forward the call through to this person. It will go through the exchange, forward it there, and connect this Jesse to this particular number on top. So the ability to forward calls through to people that you've got on your contact list is as easy as making the call. So you can have a sports club and they could have club secretary at sip.linphone. So when members call in, members can get their free LinPhone accounts registered in. When they call in from the app, it goes to that particular address. So this is like sending an email. Only difference is the address is there to link the two of you. Once you're linked, then the communication happens in between. And the audio is just cutting edge. They've got algorithms built into them, and you can choose different compression rates. You know, that's the technical side of it, but it's all built into the app very seamlessly. So yeah, that's how it is. That's how it currently works. And I encourage you to, go. I'm going to just pop across to the site. Let me see if I can open the site. And this is the desktop app. Okay, so here I've got, if I go home, I can come to Assistant. I can go create a brand new LinPhone account, or I could have one that I've got already and just load it in here. And then I can have all my contacts. So I can call these people from this list. If somebody calls me, it will ring here and I can answer. So if somebody calls me on that number, like I said, they'll type in that they're going to call now, and it will ask you, do you want to give text or do you want to type in a number? I say I want to type in text. I'll just type in, and let me just show you. Maybe I'll do it from my mobile device. I'm going to dial, let's see, I'm going to dial. Okay, I'm not sure if you can hear it ringing. Let me drag this across. I've got it on the other screen. Okay, it's busy ringing there. but it's on my second screen, so I'm going to just put down. So that's it. Get on board, go download the application, register. I suggest you register with using the cell phone number, and then you have a tool to be able to call. Get all your friends, get everybody, family, get them onto the server. Currently, as of 2020 now in April, there's only about 500,000 people that are using this LinPhone system that have registered on the system. So it's unused. It's totally, in the global sense, it's still totally new. So get on board. You can then call everybody who's on the system. Eventually, if we get millions of people on the system, then it will become the de facto calling tool. I am so positive that LinPhone will just sort of commission more service to accommodate, because they're open source and they want to encourage people to communicate using this technology. Then you don't have to pay for any of your calls except the data that you use.